I'll open the December 7th, 2020 meeting of the Winchester Select Board. My name is Michael Betancourt. Here tonight with me are Vice Chair Susan Ferdicchio, Select Board members Jackie Welch, Amy Shapiro, Mariano Goluboff. Lisa Wong, our town manager, is here in between meetings, and she'll be bouncing back and forth between the Finance Committee meeting. We'll, I think, momentarily be hearing from the director of the health department, just some COVID related updates, and see if there are questions for folks, as our numbers seem to be rising consistent with the rest of the area and country. So we'll have an opportunity to hear from Jen. In the meantime, I'll see if there are any comments or questions from members of the Select Board.
Well, could I just start out by making the land acknowledgement, since it's the first meeting in December? So I'd like to say that as a step toward carrying out our equity and anti-racism initiative, I'd like to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Massachusetts people who lived here for thousands of years before European colonists began arriving in 1630. In the 1600s, the Massachusetts were led by the Sunk Squaw of Mississauga, who was called the Squaw Sachem by the English colonists, who led her people through epidemics, wars, and displacement. We acknowledge that Winchester exists within a region where lands were taken under unjust and violent circumstances, causing a forced relocation that continues to have harmful effects on Native communities. As part of the town government of Winchester, we recognize our responsibility now to be good stewards of the land. And we acknowledge that Massachusetts, Wampanoag, and other Indigenous people from across the country currently live in Winchester and throughout the state, contributing to our communities in myriad ways. Yeah.
Thanks, Susan. Were there any other comments from members of the board?
Yeah, Mike, I just wanted to remind everyone listening that, as we approach the holiday season, that, our retailers downtown are doing a lot to make it easy to shop in their stores, and also have some really great promotions going on, and that the Chamber of Commerce is really doing a great job of trying to communicate that out. So if you are so inclined and have some gifts to buy for the holidays, I would definitely recommend and encourage everyone to go and visit our local retailers.
Thanks, Amy. Appreciate that. I know everyone's working hard to make some purchases on our local businesses, and they're ready to go and have been doing quite a bit of marketing. So thank you. I also wanted to just briefly acknowledge that the congratulations to the Master Plan Committee and the Planning Board for receiving the 2020 award from the state chapter of the American Planning Association. So the town had a new master plan that was put into place last year, and they've been recognized by one of the premier organizations for planning in the country for the regional chapter. So congratulations to them. A lot of hard work from the planning board, and the planning master plan committee as well went into that, and definitely it's been helpful to us as we've moved forward. So congrats to them. Are there any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd like to recognize that our first responders, our teachers, our DPW are making a great job in these unprecedented circumstances of COVID, and they have been for many months, but we haven't met in a while. So I just wanted to again recognize how they've stepped up in the middle of a pandemic to do whatever it takes to make it as normal as possible as it can be for us residents.
Great, thanks, Mariano. And just to give an update of our, if there are any other comments, update on our upcoming meetings and hearings. Our next meeting is next Monday, December 14th. That'll be on regular session at 7:30, and after that, tentatively January 11th. So between those times, we'll take a little time off, and I know it's been a busy year, and everyone is probably looking forward to putting 2020 behind them at some point soon too. So also for the board, this is the time of year that we do our licenses, which we will vote next week. But we do have them, in advance for signing. Usually that's a longer involved meeting where we're signing all the licenses at once. But we'll organize that with Jen Caffarella and try to get a time where we can either come in or those can be delivered, or we can kind of move them around. And then we can ratify them in our meeting the following week, December 14th. So, and I noticed Jen Murphy is here as well. Thanks for coming, Jen. I know it's been very, very busy, but we've had quite a few questions, and we just wanted to hear an update on how things were going. I know that you've been in front of the school committee and had a busy Board of Health meeting with a lot of residents in attendance, but just wanted to check in. A lot of us are getting the emails on the school side of the positive COVID tests coming in, and hopefully the two testing days that we had here are helpful to kind of identifying who is positive and who isn't, and try to keep our numbers down.
Sure. Hi. Can you see me?
I can't see you, no.
Okay. Well, I have some slides if you'd like me to share them.
Yeah, that would be great if you could do that.
I don't see an option to share my screen though.
Okay. Patty, if you're
Hold
Yeah,
on, Jen.
thank
I'm going to make you. Okay, I have promoted you to panelist. Do you have it down on the bottom of your screen to share?
Yeah, there you go.
You are.
Patty, it's disabled.
Okay, let me go back to it.
So I think the testing sites, you were mentioning the testing sites that we held for 2 days. I think they were very successful. They were filled. 360 participants was our max on both days. I believe we had just a couple of people who didn't show, but for the most part, I think, the demand certainly was there. And out of the, let's just say 720 participants, there were 15 people who tested positive. So 15 results positive from 720 people. So we had a couple glitches, but I think we worked that all out. It'll hopefully run smoothly from this point forward. I know there was a little bit of a wait the first day, but I think we worked out those kinks with Armstrong Ambulance to be able to go much faster from this point forward. There. I just wanted to talk about where we are right now, and the dashboard was updated today. Right now we have 90 active cases. This past weekend saw the most cases, the most positive cases that we've had in a 2-day period. Friday we received 24 and Saturday we received 20. So it was quite an overwhelming weekend. We did have to start to engage the help of the Contact Tracing Collaborative. That's the group that does contact tracing at the state level by Partners in Health. And so we have referred approximately 25 cases their way. So our residents, while we did want to retain all of the positive cases to be able to give, to be able to speak with them directly, we did have to give and forward to approximately 25 cases. However, we are going to keep school-related cases, whether it be staff, students, that's our priority because we'd like to have that knowledge firsthand about what's going on. But people in town may expect a call from someone other than the health department. And so right now, our total confirmed case count since the outset of this is 408. Jumping to the school numbers, as you can see, 79 total cases since school started. And this is just speaking to the in-school community, those people on hybrid who go in person. And you can see that the total number of active cases as of today is 23. And people ask all the time about the in-school transmission. And we really can really point to two instances only where we could draw the correlation between one case that affected another. So, or two, one or more cases. So there was two instances where we had some transmission within the school system. In other words, we couldn't, we ruled out any other commonalities outside of the school setting. And so I think we're doing very well for the school system. I really do. I do feel that, that these active cases that you see of staff and students, they're really acquiring it from other places outside of the school setting.
Hey, Jen, can I ask one question on the numbers for the teachers and instructional staff? Are they, if they don't live in Winchester, are they part of these numbers, or are they?
Yes.
They are, okay.
They are, right. So a teacher, for example, who may live in Woburn, we feel like it's still important for them to be counted here because they are within our buildings, they're physically present within the community, so.
But all of these 23 may not be part of the active cases in town.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Correct, thanks for that distinction, yep.
Yeah, thank you.
So Jen, there's been some comments that there's no transmission in the schools and that the schools should reopen full time and we should double the number of kids that we have per classroom because there's zero transmission in the schools. But you're saying that's not true, that there is transmission in the schools?
What I'm saying is there are two instances where we can point to where, you know, and nothing's definitive, okay? Let's just be, nothing is 100% certain, but there are definitely, ruling out everything else, there are two situations where we would deem it to be a cluster and the commonality was the school setting.
Okay, so is it your opinion then that if we double the number of kids per classroom, if we went and we said, okay, everybody back in the schools, which means that we doubled, because right now we have cohorts, right? So we have half the kids on Monday, Tuesday, half on Thursday, Friday. So if we were to reopen full time, it would be double the number of kids per classroom. There's already transmission in the schools as it is now. So there would continue to be, and possibly even more, because there would be double the number of kids in each classroom.
Right. So I think transmission right now that we know of and that we can point to and we can say, you know, there's a good chance that that was in-person transmission within the school setting. It's still low. Of course, the unanswered question is, do we have asymptomatic transmission, which is always a possibility. So right now our kids are at 6 feet in the learning environment, right? If you increase to full occupancy, you're going to have 3 feet between kids. Are you going to increase risk? Yes, you're going to increase risk, certainly. And that's, you know, we can't even answer the question about logistical issues like spacing at lunch. I don't believe there's enough spacing to have unmasked lunchtime at 6 feet anyway. So it would be a logistical issue regarding that. But certainly the risk would increase if you're putting people, a lot of more bodies in a space, and two, the distance between them is closer. So those increase your risk, certainly.
So, I mean, I think your department, I think that the school nurses, the teachers, all the staff, And the kids who, I mean, honestly, my kids go to school and they say everybody's wearing masks all the time. I think everybody has been doing a fantastic job. And the fact that we can only trace 2 cases to in-school transmission. And I mean, yes, like you said, there's probably more asymptomatic in-school transmission, but the fact that we can only trace 2 says how great of a job everybody's doing. I just want to clarify that there's not some magical property to the schools that there's no transmission in the schools, which is what we've been hearing from some people, that we should put all the kids back in school because somehow magically the schools have no transmission at all. So that's not the case, right? And so if we were to put all the kids back in school, we would expect there to be a lot more transmission just because there would be more packing everywhere, like you said, in the classrooms as well as in the lunchroom and everywhere else. Is that right?
I think the risk certainly is greater. You know, I understand that there is a drive to do that, you know, based on emotional and social well-being of kids. I get all that. And I guess I have the luxury of just speaking purely from a public health standpoint when I say this, that the risk will increase and that this is all a very large experiment. So in the end, I don't know definitively how it will play out. However, based on what we know, with the kids at 6 feet wearing masks, everybody following those rules and that structure right now, as we know it, has been successful.
Okay, thank you.
I just ask you a couple quick questions. Thank you so much for your dedication to the town. I mean, your job has just, you know, obviously exponentially grown in 2020. So we truly appreciate it, as we always indicate to you as often as possible. But so thank you so much. But it was just kind of, you know, I'm not being picky, but I can't see that maybe they're visible. But I was just kind of curious, for what period of time, like when they're active, is that roughly 2 weeks, where it's a total active and so total recovered would be, like these cases would be older than 2 weeks, presumably in column 2.
No, so the active refers to someone in isolation, and isolation period is minimum 10 days. And so the earliest someone could be released from isolation would be 10, you know, on day 11, essentially. So.
And then the number would go to column 2.
Go to recovered, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So this doesn't speak to quarantine. This is just the positive people who are infected.
Right. Okay. But it's active. Like those numbers are probably changing, evolving with each day, as far as column 1 and 2.
Correct. We check all of our cases every day. You know, you have people moving in and out of isolation. You know, we get new cases, we add them to the active column. People recover, we add them to the other column. So it's a fluctuating number day to day, and we do update this daily.
Okay. And last question, all of these are based on this fall, like this isn't including the spring, correct?
No. This is since school started, which was, I believe, the 16th.
Right,
The 16th. I believe in person started a little bit later on the 23rd. So, you know, we did start the chart on the 16th though.
Okay. Thank you.
Of September. Yeah.
Okay, so I now have a quick question, and that is on these numbers that you're showing, did these include the cases that you talked about over the weekend?
Yes.
Okay. I forgot that
Yeah.
part.
So
Thank you.
Yes, we only had over the weekend, I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. It might have been 6 or so new cases. It was a very small percentage of the new cases we did receive over the weekend.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's where we are. If you'd like, I can take a little bit of a retrospective look on some of the data. These are some of the same slides I used last week during a Board of Health meeting, as well as a school committee meeting, if anyone has any interest in just quickly going through it.
Yeah, those were very helpful.
Okay.
Jen, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So here's a trend line from where we started in March to where we are. Well, this slide is through November 27th. We do obviously have to update all of our data as soon as we can catch a breath, and we will be updating charts on the dashboard as well. So we will have complete data through the very end of November shortly. So this was through November 27th, and at that time we had 81 cases. And you can see this, you know, the second surge, really, we started to grow dramatically in cases, probably around the beginning of October. I could say we were really impacted greatly. And then from that point forward, it's just been an incredible spike in our cases. This is just an age distribution. You know, obviously this will be updated as well, but I have to say, you know, we're not going to add too many to the lower end of this chart. The younger age groups, you really are going to see it probably most likely 30 and over the cases. So I just like to highlight this because it may speak to people in the age groups, and they may need to do a little self-reflection. And what am I doing? You know, what are my behaviors out and about? Where am I going that I shouldn't be going, perhaps? And really think about, you know, think about what you're doing in terms of your exposure. Let's see, the next chart here is regarding positivity. This slide is actually current. This is what DPH produced in terms of our positivity rate last week. And we are still in the yellow category. You remember the state gives out the gray, green, yellow, red. So we are still yellow, although we are surrounded by red. Woburn is red, Medford is red. And you can see that reflected here. For example, Woburn's, their positivity rate is 5.27%, and the WHO and the CDC consider anything above 5% to be very concerning. And when you really need to scale back on what you're doing and take a look at your town and what you may need to get more restrictive about. Our positivity rate went up slightly last week. We were at 1.65%. We had a little slight increase in the number of tests that were conducted, which is always a good thing. We like to see that number grow. And we had 74 positive tests this week. So we are hovering still under 2%, which is good. And if you look at some of the other communities, Concord is yellow, Bedford is also in the yellow. Lexington, I don't know how they do it, but they're still in the green. In fact, I reached out to them today to see what's going on in Lexington, that their positivity rate is so low, but good for them. They did attribute it to many people working from home. Many people live in Lexington who are in academia, and so they must be teaching from home. To break down some school data even further, and again, this data was just through November 27th, we broke down by school the percentage of positive cases attributed at each school. And you'll see the middle school and the high school did have the bulk of the cases. The high school is 24% and the middle school is 22% of all student infections. And this does not include staff. This is simply student infections. And this was out of a pool of 38 student infections total that we had at that time through November.
Jen, yeah, one question on this. So how do we notify people, like if a student is positive in a class, like how do we determine who is a close contact versus notifying everybody in that classroom and the teacher? Like, how does that work?
So we do work quite well with the schools. We have a great partnership going on. So for example, if we receive a notice of a student who was positive, first we have to interview the student or the parent and the student, if the student obviously is a minor, to try to get at you know, the behavior of the student, where the student has been, were they in school, infectious, is the student symptomatic? Those are really important questions. And if we determine that the student was in school while infectious, we enlist the help of the school nurse to either contact the teachers to interview them to find out if there was anything about the classroom activity that day that may have determined close contacts, or we ourselves at the health department do reach out to the teachers ourselves and also call to try to determine, was the teacher or other students in the classroom close contacts? And it's been working on the whole quite well, actually. The teachers really know what's going on in the classroom day to day. And they're able to tell us, for example, well, you know, I had to go over and help, you know, John several times. He was stuck on a problem or stuck on this. So yes, I was at his desk for, you know, X number of minutes within 6 feet. So it works like that. And it does work very well. We get a lot of information through that partnership.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. This slide just speaks to symptoms, and in our cases, we find that 74% of our cases do exhibit some of the common symptoms that you hear that people who are positive display. For example, it could be anything though from a sore throat, a migraine, cold-like symptoms, extreme fatigue, it could be vomit, diarrhea, really runs the gamut, but we do track all symptoms that people experience. And this goes to show that majority of cases do experience one or more symptoms. And if you break that out even further to the student grouping that we talked about, the 38 student infections, you'll see that 61% of students, all students, experience symptoms. But then we broke it out a little bit further. Whoops, sorry. I wanted to talk about kids, students who were infected 10 years and younger. And this is interesting. Only 47% of that age group do display symptoms. So it sort of follows the national trend that you hear about that, you know, the younger the person is, the less likely they are to experience severe illness or oftentimes to display symptoms. So we're seeing that as well. Students 11 to 18 years old, 73% of those people display symptoms. So again, following similar pattern that is seen on the state and national level. The total number of people hospitalized out of all of our cases, all of our residents who are positive for COVID, 91, only 9% were hospitalized. So 91% of our cases are never in need of hospitalization, which is great. But that's not to say that you don't know how COVID will affect someone. And we have had cases, and I'm not saying this as a scare tactic, it's just what we've seen. Seemingly healthy people end up with COVID pneumonia and do end up hospitalized. And, you know, people like to think that, well, it's only those with underlying conditions who are going to be the most impacted. And while that is true, you also do see a fair amount of healthy people severely impacted as well. And I just want to remind people of that because I feel like there's a little bit of complacency about this, and people are a little bit dismissive right now when we call them. We hear a lot right now, oh, you know, it's just like the flu, you'll get over it, it's, you know, no big deal. I think people need to remember this is different. It is different. You don't know a couple of things. You don't know exactly how it will impact someone. And number two, you don't know what the long-term effects are. So I think people should keep that in mind. This slide is already outdated. November 18th, DPH did update the quarantine protocol to be able to shave off some time off of a quarantine because 14 days is an awful long time. And while COVID can develop over 14 days, they realized that, you know, after day 10, the likelihood of COVID infection occurring was very, very small. So for a few weeks now, we've enjoyed this new protocol where you could test out. If you were asymptomatic, you received a test on day 8, you could actually cut your quarantine down by a few days. This changed as of today, based on the CDC guidance. I'm sure you heard at the end of last week, they offered new protocol for quarantine, and it's going to shorten it even more. Actually, it'll shorten it down to about 5 days if you're asymptomatic and test negative. So we will be following this as of tonight. The government never gives us a heads up, so we're unable to call all of the people in quarantine to let them know that, you know, these are the new rules, but we're on it, we're getting to it. Again, we were just notified today of a new protocol, so we will be following that. So you will hear of people out and about who may be close contacts, but do not have to stay quarantined for 14 days. I guess that's the the new message.
And Jen, so it's 5 days if you get a negative test. But if you don't, is it 10 days? Is that the new protocol?
No, Amy, I should just get rid of this slide because I don't even know all the ins and outs, quite honestly. It's, if you're asymptomatic, test on day 5. If you're negative, then you can be released on day 8. It's a little bit complicated. It's not necessarily super straightforward. And I want to make sure I have all my ducks in a row before I actually.
Sure, no worries.
Yeah, okay, thanks. But just know that our nurses are getting up to speed on this, so our whole team will be ready to impart the new instructions to all the close contacts that we have from currently and going forward. Vaccine distribution. So we will be ready when it's time to mass vaccinate our population. So in other words, once we get to phases 3 and 4, that will be the time when the health department will be involved on a much larger scale, getting it out to the masses. Right now, you've probably heard that Massachusetts is going to start receiving vaccine basically any day now for acute care facilities and some other priority facilities. So that's starting this December. So this is great news, light at the end of the tunnel. So phases 3 and 4, though, where you'd see the health department receive large shipments to get out to our residents who are not high risk, who don't meet a certain criteria like, an age grouping or underlying conditions, then you will start to see this hopefully by April or May. I'm being told now, but that could obviously change. And one of the questions I get all the time is, well, these vaccines have to be frozen, and how are we going to handle all that? And do we have the necessary equipment? And the answer is that we are going to be given the equipment we need. In fact, I just received an agreement from the state that lists exactly what we need. And I will be reading through that thoroughly, signing it and getting it back to the state so they are well aware that Winchester is ready, willing, and able to disseminate the vaccine as soon as they can get it to us. And those are all the slides I have actually right now.
Thanks, Jen. We really appreciate that. I just have a couple questions for you, and I'm sure other members of the board do as well. Regarding the school-aged kids and young people in general, really, on the kind of mental health side of things, I know that you've done a lot of work with Doc Butler and the coalition and on the interface program. I mean, have we seen our kind of numbers tick up? Or, how are kids doing? And is there something that we can do on that side of it?
Right. And I know that DOT has been trying to offer some targeted programming around those issues you just raised. And I know she will continue to do that based on the feedback that we're hearing from people, as well as the feedback that we're hearing from our team of nurses who are speaking to cases and to contacts out there. In terms of interface, the use has certainly increased. I don't have in front of me the actual reporting numbers. They haven't given us anything in writing. They report to us twice a year. So I'm very interested to know what the number is for this latter half of the year. So I can certainly get that back to you. But Dot we were speaking recently and she did mention, in fact, there was an increase. So that's good that people are taking advantage of it. I hope that it's being pushed out there so that people can see that number. And if you don't, let us know, because we certainly are able to promote that even further in different avenues.
Great, thanks. The other question I had too, a few people have been, asking. I know that you've been at the center of this for a long time, so that you seen a lot happen. But for a lot of folks, seems like the numbers have been increasing, dramatically. I know you spoke to that at the outset of the meeting, but do we know, is there anything in particular that's causing that, or locally? Is it restaurants? Is it gatherings? We've talked a little bit about the schools, but I guess the question is there something that we can communicate to the public that can help us stay on track?
Right. So it's interesting because a lot of our cases right now they're hard to pinpoint, I would say, the index case in a house. We have a lot of household transmission, but where that index case acquired it is awfully hard to nail down, because when you ask a series of questions, and these are preformed questions that the state gives us, for example, have you been to a mall? Have you been to indoor dining? Have you been to, all within a certain time frame, right? We're trying to figure out during the incubation period, where have people been and what have they been doing? People will answer yes to many of those questions. Yes, I was at the mall. Yes, I went out of state. Yes, I, went to a restaurant. So oftentimes it's very hard to know which of those events was the actual scene where the virus was acquired. But I can say that people are certainly out and about doing those things, right? And some of them we know are probably riskier than others, like indoor dining without a mask on is probably riskier than, maybe you run into a store with a mask on and you're in there for less than 5 minutes to buy a book and leave. We also see a fair amount of people. Well, we have a lot of childcare in this town. We certainly see a fair amount of people caring for children coming from other communities. And, those people are probably doing the same things that many of us are doing, shopping, indoor dining, and so forth. So I can't say, X% of all of our cases are doing this activity and this is the culprit. It's a little tricky right now. We have an interesting dynamic where the governor's saying, hey, we have this stay-at-home advisory, and it says only go out of your house if you need groceries, pharmacy, critical items. Oh, but by the way, shop local and go shopping, and don't forget to frequent your restaurants. So it's hard to reconcile these messages, I think, for people. It's very confusing, and it's very frustrating, I have to admit, on my level, because I feel like I'm fighting a rising tide. And so it'll be interesting to see what the governor will do in the coming weeks, because I think we in public health are really hopeful that further restrictions might be coming out. Although personally, I'm not going to enjoy that. However, it's necessary. I think we're at a point now where it's necessary. So we'll see. I wish I could point to one particular activity and say, you know what, this is it. Stop doing this. But it is honestly a little tricky now, because so many things are opened up. Yes, we have to be at home by 10 p.m., but what we do before 10 p.m. is really open for a lot of activity. So I'm sorry I can't exactly pinpoint that for you now. Perhaps the state will take all of this data that we are getting the answers to from all of our cases, and maybe they can figure it out for us and give us some data in the aggregate.
But it's a general riskier behavior, which is being in large public places for a longer period of time. I mean, those are the things.
Sure, certainly. Wherever there's more bodies unmasked,
yeah,
in a smaller setting, for sure, you're increasing your risk. Absolutely.
Have we seen any more of the severe symptoms? I mean, I think that you mentioned a little bit. I mean, part of it is that a lot of people are getting it and see it as not too bad, and especially if they're younger and whatnot. But have we seen anyone that have cases that are more severe, where they're in bed and struggling a little bit?
Oh yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Yep. In fact, a lot of our cases say to us, as soon as the vaccine comes out, I am first in line. They will not hesitate. They say, I do not want to go through that ever again. And I really don't wish it upon anyone, because it can be debilitating for quite some time. And it's not just the fever, you're bedridden, you feel awful, you're completely fatigued. I mean, those are the common things you hear, but you really cannot get out of bed. You have chills, you have, you don't feel well. It is not a typical cold, and it's certainly in most cases not a typical flu. It's worse than that. And I do think most of our cases, while they do recover, thank goodness, most cases certainly do recover. no one enjoys what they are going through right now, and it can be very, very nasty.
And even those that require, there's unknown long-term consequences, right? I mean, I have a friend who recovered, but right now is in a rehab facility. Even though they don't have COVID anymore, they're relearning how to breathe and how to talk.
Right, exactly. And we hear of that a lot. And that's not something that we follow, but it will be interesting to see what the data is around the long haulers and others impacted for a long time after the infection clears. It'll be very interesting because one of the common things we hear, though, and you highlighted a case that's unfortunate and very severe. One of the common things we hear, once the infection resolves, we hear, it takes a long time for me to be able, me meaning a case, telling us it takes a long time for me just to be able to get enough energy to walk out of the house and go somewhere. I mean, the fatigue lingers. The ability to regain strength and energy takes quite some time in many cases.
Thank you so much, Jen. I don't know if there are any other questions from members of the board or anyone else is here. Again, thanks. Let us know if there's anything that we can do to help out, Jen. We're there for you, and we appreciate all the hard work that you've done, and the nurses and staff and everyone on down. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you, Jen.
Moving on to the next item, we'll go down to item B, the acceptance of donations. There's a donation amount of $3,250 from VFW Post 3719.
Right. So I move that we accept with gratitude the donations totaling $3,250 from the Winchester VFW Post 3719, Joanne DiNapoli Charitable Foundation, Inc., Christopher Columbus Club, Mary Brown, and Danoff Contracting, and these are all for the Public Safety Memorial.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes, for me, the motion carries unanimously 5-0. And we'll jump right down. We're running a little bit late to the tax levy classification hearing. I see Dan McGurl is here. Hey, Dan, thank you for being patient. We'll open the public hearing on that. And I don't know if you want to give us a little bit of a background. I think you're muted.
Dan, you're still on mute.
Microphone is in your left-hand corner at the bottom.
Sometimes if his laptop is on mute, that might be preventing the sound.
If he's doing it from his desktop at work, there is no microphone.
All right, well, I guess we'll move on, and I'll just kind of jump around until we see Dan jump back in with his mic on, because we do need to have that tax levy classification. Oh, there's Dan.
Connecting, it says.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay, now?
Yep, we got you.
Yes,
Okay,
we got
great.
it.
Sorry about that.
No worries. We made you wait too long was the problem. You had too much time. So
It was, but it was very interesting stuff. All right. Once again, it's an annual meeting we're having here, annual hearing regarding the tax rate. There are 4 questions before you. You usually take a vote on the first question of a residential factor of 1, meaning we have 1 tax rate here in town, ignoring the fact we have Chapter 110. That's completely separate from this issue. Questions 2, 3, and 4, we take no action on them because we do not have anything that relate to those 3 questions. This year, the tax levy's gone up about 5.5%. So therefore, tax will go up 5.5%. We have about $1.7 million left in the excess levy. We didn't spend all the override money yet. We were up to about $8.3 million that we spent out of that $10 million. So this year, like I said, the average tax bill now will be $15,034, which is up about 5.2% from last year. The average single family assessment is $1,172,000. So overall, it's not a bad year. Actually, the market is very good for Winchester, as it is in most of Massachusetts. Prices keep increasing. Things are selling fast. So the average tax bill will be up about $737 this year. So tonight, what I need for you people is to decide if you want to have a classification, which we haven't had one since 1984, so I assume we wouldn't be having one. But we need a vote on the first question and no action on questions 2, 3, and 4. I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
Any questions from members of the board? I think typically we've held the singular, and you can correct me on this one, Dan, the singular tax classification, so we're not shifting the burden into the commercial side, which we have a very small amount of, and it would really disproportionately, I mean, it's a bad time to disproportionately impact local business. So questions?
That's why question 1 would be a factor of 1, would not be shifting anything.
Okay.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you, Dan, for your years of service to the town. That's obviously important, your involvement regarding the revenue side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what I would say is I know some of the towns that we compare to do have classification and shift some, but I mean, given that only 3.5% of our total base is commercial and industrial, we would have to classify. So we would have to make it so much bigger that to make even a dent, that I think it would put too much pressure on our commercial and industrial, especially commercial right now with COVID. So I'm in favor of keeping it at 1.
Yeah, I was going to say that in the middle of the pandemic, when everybody's experiencing the impact of that, doesn't seem like the time to make the step and classify the tax rate. So I think sticking with the 1 rate, it makes sense this year.
Okay. There no other questions. We can close the public hearing and take either comments or a motion on the questions. And Dan, we really only need a vote on the first one?
Yes, you could take no action. The others are just, vote of no action either way.
Okay.
So I guess I'll make a motion that the town will not classify tax rates and maintain a tax factor of 1?
1. Yes.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes for me, motion carries unanimously 5-0. And we, do you want to take no action on the other numbers? Okay.
If you want, I can make a motion that we will
Yeah,
not,
let's do that.
that will take no action on the other questions.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and yes for me. The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'll see if there's any matters. We'll take matters from the audience, anything that's otherwise not on our agenda. If anybody has any comments or questions. I think Rich Mucci has his hand raised. So can we elevate him? I'm not sure if that's for this or from the chamber, but hey, Rich, how are you?
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to just thank Jen Murphy for that explanation tonight. That's the most informative I've heard in a while, and I think it was very helpful. I hope a lot of people can get that message out. I think it's important. I'm glad to hear that the 2 testing days were very successful for the town, that over 720 tests were taken, and that there were identified positive tests. My concern has been my concern for several months is that we're limiting that testing to just those 2 days and a couple of days here and there going forward. I understand it costs a lot of money to run the testing dates to the tune of about $26,000, but I don't understand why we can't charge people for these tests. If they're $65, if we charge people $80, I think we would have the same amount of testing success. And we could also, if we couldn't fill our time slots, we could open it up to other communities as well, and kind of be a leader for the region. I saw the governor extended the Stop the Spread sites today to other regions of the state. However, there is a noticeable gap in our area, in the 128 area. And I think our town is positioned appropriately for a hotbed of COVID activity to serve other communities and our own citizens. So I would urge the select board on your agenda tonight to really question Lisa Wong and figure out if this is something that we can continue in mass and have several days of testing a week and try to make this work. I think it would be worthwhile for our citizens. One thing Jen didn't say is that we've had 98 cases in 1 week in this town. And if you just use her statistics at 10%, that means 10 of those people that have been diagnosed with COVID this week will end up in the hospital. If you multiply that by this month, we're going to have 40 residents in the hospital. These are staggering numbers that require action. And I'm looking at you as the leaders of this community. I've been to several meetings, board of health meeting, school committee meetings. I've met privately with people. I've been on reopening committee meetings, and we really need a coordinated response. And it really starts with you. And I would urge you over the next couple of weeks, I know you're not meeting regularly, but maybe there is time for an emergency meeting with these other agencies in town, with the select board, with the school committee and the board of health to really coordinate a response as these numbers are growing exponentially, and to really think how we can make this community much safer. We really need leadership, and I think it starts with you all tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. We appreciate your comments and your engagement on this issue. And I think Lisa was just before the Finance Committee bouncing between meetings regarding some additional funds for testing. Going into town meeting, we were also going into what we anticipate as being a spike where we're at now. So instead of identifying specific departmental increases for testing dollars, we set aside quite a bit more money than we usually would for testing, the Finance Committee's reserve. So when we have testing programs that we're initiating, they're kind of the gatekeeper of those funds, which are in excess of $500,000. So we're not receiving any additional federal aid, and our CARES Act funding expires at the end of the year. So we are limited with resources, but we have put ourselves in the position of hopefully being able to put some more testing out there for the community. So we'll certainly see. And Lisa, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if there's anything that any information from that meeting or that you can provide to us.
Sure. Let me start with saying that we're hoping to have 3 additional testing dates in December, and we are looking to target dates that we think there'll be the highest demand. So that's usually right before the holidays, and also sort of in a 3 to 5 day period after a holiday, because that's when symptoms might start to show up, or that's when asymptomatic people will have a higher likelihood of testing. I think if they're exposed and they try to test the next day, that might not be as accurate. So I'll work with the Board of Health to kind of figure out what the prime days that residents will want to get tested and try to book those dates. I just got off of the FinCom meeting. They reduced the reserve fund transfer that I requested for $102,000 for 4 testing dates in January by half to $51,000 to cover 2 dates. They would like me to work with the comptroller to see if there's a way to get the revenue from those 2 dates to fund more testing dates. I had gotten an explanation from the comptroller that the revenue is booked separately, so it's sort of unable to be the budgeted source. It has to be something that's allocated for testing. So even though it's a net zero for the town, there still needs to be an allocation source. I'll, but I can certainly work with her to see if there's a way for us to, if there's any way for us to figure out how to, how to have it be net negative. And it could be, even though Armstrong does not accept payments, maybe there's enough time that we could be there first. So if we can, maybe do some of the admin work and have them accept the payments, then it would go directly to them and we would just be the facilitator. So that could be one possible way that we could do it. But most, every company that we've talked to, the town is the one responsible for collecting the funds. Armstrong does not at least have a minimum. A lot of other companies actually require that we fund the minimum. So if people don't show up, we still have to fund a minimum amount. So again, you need a funding source from the town. So we are hoping to have more select dates. I think the question is going to be, when we start charging, what will the demand be? And that was something that FinCom really wanted to understand. So they said, do the first 2, see what demand is, come back to us right afterwards, and then ask for more money and kind of show us that there is a demand out there for the service that we're providing.
Lisa, is there a way, I know that we spoke with Physicians One as well, another company that's been doing this in communities, but is there a way for us to connect with insurance companies to not bill? I mean, I don't think we want to get in that side of it, but I know Physicians One was doing a little bit more of the admin work.
Yeah. So Physicians One charges $90 per test, plus the admin on top of that. I don't know what that is exactly, but I know, $65 plus the $500 per hour is still cheaper than what they would have charged. They still require that the town collect payment, even if they go after insurance, and they still require that we do sort of the signups and the registration. So the biggest benefit is that they will go after insurance, but they also require that the town guarantee a minimum. So if Armstrong is $26,000 for a 4-hour period, and they're approximately 50% higher, then that'll be like, almost close to $40,000. I think it was like 39 something that we have to sign a contract with them for. So even if so we actually need more money to sign a contract with them that we have to allocate from somewhere.
but we could bill the insurance company for some of that at least.
Yeah. So what the benefits of that is that some people will pay more, right? Some people will pay 90 something versus 60 something. The other benefit is that that's a net negative. A positive that some people will get that completely covered by insurance. And then the negative for the town is that we would have to allocate 80,000 for 2 testing dates versus 50. So we would need even more money up front. So both scenarios we're hoping are net negatives, but it's just having the money from a source that has to be allocated, in order to sign that contract.
Can I just add something? First of all, thank you so much, Mr. Mucci, for your comments. And I know that they're so important during this time period. So obviously Winchester isn't, there's some urgent care locations not far away, but there's none in our town. So I guess there's kind of 2 things that occur to me. One is the convenience of having some testing available in our town, which at least indirectly, if not directly, encourages people to test. And obviously that was just demonstrated. And then the second point, though, is that there are other locations to get testing. I mean, not only in hospitals, but also in urgent cares where you can get the 15-minute rapid tests, et cetera. But obviously they're kind of, it can be a tricky situation because they're often very crowded and you often have to wait a long time. And because there aren't any in our town, it's hard to know exactly, how long you're going to have to wait, et cetera. So your points are well taken. It sounds like through our town leadership with our town manager, as well as the comments from our chair, that we're trying to figure out how to increase these testing options. I mean, I guess throughout our, people should definitely be encouraged to test wherever they can if they think that they have symptoms, because there is testing available. It's just not as convenient as in our town. Okay.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Lisa. Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. Lisa, we were talking about continuing the same tests that we were doing, that we did previously, and this would be PCR tests.
Yeah, PCR tests. So Jen Murphy just clarified that physician 1 had actually followed up with the town, and actually they do not collect insurance. So, so the the $90 is just, I guess they just charge a higher admin fee.
And Lisa, were we able to at least manage for the past 2 events that we held some of the admin piece on our own? I mean, I was at the testing site on Sunday, and I thought that it was very smooth. I mean, it moved along, really quickly as well. I mean, I think that's the piece with this that is significant, is that you've got to really keep people moving in order to make it work. And the other question too on that one is, I know that the Jenks was very good about letting us use the facility for those 2 days. Are they going to continue to be willing to let us do that? Because it's an increased risk for them as well, where there's, vulnerability.
Yeah, so right now it points to them not letting us use it for continued testing. So I'm going to be meeting with our facilities team this week to look at the auditorium. So there's a couple of things that we, there's a couple of things that we kind of had to work out behind the scenes. There were people that signed up but didn't register, and so reconciling that was difficult. It was like 2/3 of people signed up but didn't register, so that increased the wait time. So, but still, like we were anticipating a wait time of like 10 to 15 minutes, which is, I think pretty good. And I think we got up to like 45 minutes because we had that registration snafu. So we were able to, fix some of that on Sunday, where we sent out multiple reminders for people who signed up to register, and then gave us enough time to try to reconcile that list, and then anticipated putting more people on registration on Sunday. So we'd never done this before, so you kind of just learn things. And then Armstrong was supposed to show up, at least a half an hour, if not an hour before the testing started at noon. They didn't show up till just after noon. So noon came around, people were waiting for testing, and we had no idea where they were. So, we're starting to make a lot of frantic calls. So I have to, work with the company to kind of figure out what happened exactly. But, these are kind of, so, these are kind of like the soft costs of administration of us just, fielding a lot of calls and, trying to figure out the signups and doing things like that. But, we'll do a couple more this month, and I think we've sort of figured out a lot of what works and doesn't work. And then in January, we'll figure out what the demand is for paid testing. And I think FinCom has kind of indicated that they can certainly increase the amount of money they provide, but they can't use up the entire reserve fund because that won't be replenished until town meeting. So we do have to find a funding source for testing. And if it does pay for itself, one person did bring up whether we could, we could fundraise for that amount of money. If that was like, how that would work. I don't know how you fundraise and then people get their money back, or, we charge we're still trying to figure that out.
So are you ready to pretty much go ahead with is it 3 additional dates in December?
Yeah, so I certainly would like some input. It seems like the highest demand for testing is a few days before a holiday. So it could be, if we're thinking that Thursday and Sunday, if we sort of did similar to here, people getting tested on a Thursday, the people that got tested last Thursday got an email at 6:30 a.m. on Friday with their test results. So it was very fast. It was amazing. I don't know if we can guarantee that, but if people get tested on a Thursday, supposedly they would get their results Friday or Saturday. And if they're heading off or doing something for that whole next week, or if they get tested Sunday and they find out Monday or Tuesday for the upcoming Thursday holiday. So we can also shift the dates. We can look at Friday, Monday, Saturday, Tuesday kind of thing. And then I think it makes sense to do one probably 4 or 5 days after Christmas. So if people are getting together for Christmas, then that's kind of the sweet spot, I think, for getting tested. And then it's also a couple days before New Year. So you're going to have both people on tail end of wanting to get tested because of Christmas, and then wanting to get tested right before New Year's. So that's our thinking. And then 2 January dates would happen, again, probably 5 to 7 days after the New Year's, when people get back.
But you don't need us as the select board to identify the dates. We trust you to figure out the best dates.
Yeah, no, I'll work with the Board of Health, and I'll work with Armstrong to see what their availability is.
And you need a location too. Jinx is not going to let you do another set of testing, right?
So they only authorized 2 dates, and we're supposed to kind of come back together and see how it went. But so I'm not getting any indication that they're going to be ready to decide for the December dates. But I'll start talking with them about January, because we're able to get steady testing starting in January. Again, the Jenks would be ideal just because it's set up very well, unless, I figure out how to get the auditorium set up, but that's got, there's a few challenges there.
None of this is as straightforward as we think. It's tricky to run these things.
And as far as the testing dates, it seems that the kind of before the holiday time, tells us, who has it going in that direction, and then, right afterwards, before I guess kids come back to school, that tells us who has it coming back from whatever activity that they've been participating in over that period of time. So just, I guess we're just balancing those dates, trying to figure out when the best time is. So.
Can I just add one thing real quickly? So obviously this is a tremendous commitment by the town, and it's important, and no question about any of that. I just wonder if residents should be encouraged to get tested on their own at, either a hospital or, one of the urgent care sites if they think they have symptoms, so that, they're not inadvertently potentially infecting others in the town. So it's sort of obvious, but I just, the town can only do so much with our financial resources, as has been very concisely indicated by the town manager and by our chair. So I just wonder if it would also be helpful if town residents are encouraged, because I think it's kind of confusing where and how to get testing, because a lot of the sites, and I have a fair amount of knowledge about it, but a lot of the sites have different protocols and different procedures. So it's not obviously the town's responsibility, but perhaps it's would be helpful to residents to kind of be reminded that they can get tested or could seek testing elsewhere if they think they have symptoms.
Yeah, and I think when we're not just going to market, the testing sites or the testing dates that we put on, but we'll put out general messaging about ways that people should, keep themselves safe over the holidays. And if they need to get tested or want to get tested, then we can give them the full range of options, including the Stop the Spread sites.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Are there any other questions or comments? I guess we have this listed under business item 4, but I think this is it. This is that conversation. So if there are other questions or comments, or Lisa, if there's anything that you need from us to put something in motion, one of the possibilities, I suppose, is maybe a drive-through process as well. Really, in the relative state of emergency that we're in, I think that we could accommodate anything really, but to the degree that we need road closures or anything like that, just let me know.
I know Armstrong was very much against drive-through because I guess the samples don't do as well outside, so they still do need access to an indoor facility. So we'll have to kind of figure that out, because I know with the seniors especially, they're kind of coming up to me, letting me know they're there, and then waiting in their cars. So I kind of had to figure out where they were in line and then kind of run and get them. So there's certainly, we sort of had a sign that kind of showed the cohort, every 10-minute cohort, like that we were registering, but I don't think it was as visible from the parking lot. So again, there's things like that we will kind of work out to try to figure out how to make it as smooth as possible.
Can we coordinate a little bit, maybe to sort of defray some of this burden with Winchester Hospital? Because while we may not have, urgent care here, obviously we have a tremendous hospital facility, and obviously they're conducting tests. So it's just in a different method. So, that's a phenomenal resource that obviously most towns don't have that we have. So I'm just kind of curious what, whether or not we may be able to coordinate some of those efforts.
Yeah, we've tried. So they won't. They closed their testing site. So, and they my understanding is that it takes 5 to 8 days sometimes to get your results back.
Yeah, it's almost like all the hospitals are like that.
Yeah, and they only work with physician ordered, so it's kind of like three major issues. And our insurance company also says if it's better if we do it on town-owned property too.
Interesting. Okay.
And I think to Jackie's point too, our messaging is important about the responsibility of testing, and that it's informing people that not only have symptoms, but are, concerned about that they have a responsibility to other members in our community. It's not just get a test so you can, have a get out of jail free card and then go away and go party. I mean, it's there, for a specific purpose related to stopping the spread. So,
and also just to that point, sorry to jump in, but if you have symptoms, that's my understanding with the urgent care, is often the price is typically covered. I mean, maybe it depends on the insurer, so I shouldn't say something just generally, but that's my understanding. If you're asymptomatic, there's a charge, and if you're not, then it's typically covered. So that's another way to kind of message that as well. But I agree with you completely, Mr. Betancourt, that it seems like even if it's a burden to go get tested outside of our town, it's important to the town if somebody has symptoms. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is, at $65 or even $70 if we want to try to cover overhead. I haven't heard any places that are cheaper. So we're the cheapest. We probably have the quickest lines. Again, 10, 15 minutes is what we're striving for, 45 minutes when a lot of things go wrong. Other places, I think they're expecting 2 to 3 hours as the norm. The location is right. And they certainly know who to talk to. They call the town manager directly. They call you directly. So I think it's definitely something that makes something that might be scary, or if they've heard like terrible things about waiting in line. If it does incentivize people, when we're looking at like the 700 tests that we did, if we're taking 30 or 50 people that are asymptomatic and wouldn't get tested, that does huge things for slowing down community spread. So I think there's many, many positives to doing this.
So Mike, do we need to authorize Lisa to do anything further? Does she need anything from us?
I don't think so. I think we've kind of, in our past meetings, given her as broad authority as possible to kind of execute these testing programs. And it's, as we know, just a moving target. So I don't want to necessarily vote on something specific because, we don't really know what we don't know at this point. So it's, but I think that Lisa's been working with the health department, and it seems like she's way ahead of us, so we appreciate it. So thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
If there are any other questions, then we'll move on, and as I said, that we'll consider that kind of taken care of, business item 4 as well, and we'll kind of return back to things in order. And look and see, is there anything, Lisa, that maybe we can jump? I see Ann Storr is here as well. Maybe we can jump on the business item 1 in regards to Winter Pond. Mm-hmm. As part of the, just to give the board a little bit of background, as part of the mitigation discussions with Eversource on the 115 line that goes through Medford and down over on Woodside Road, we were in conversations with the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee to do some traffic mitigation work there, but also with the Friends of Winter Pond to do some improvements there along the sediment drain, and there's really quite a bit of other improvements that need to be done. So with that said, and as we've seen, the money that we had initially agreed to with Eversource to offset some of those costs, isn't getting us as far along as we had hoped. So we're looking tonight to kind of start the process to address what the Friends of Winter Pond were initially looking for. And I don't know if we can elevate Ann, if Ann Storr is available too. Maybe she can weigh in a little bit, but it's fine if she's not available. Hopefully we have a representative they also put in a request for an earmark in the supplemental budget. As we all know, that this is a tough budget season, so we kind of want to keep moving on both tracks. So we were looking for $6,000 to work with VHB to kind of have an initial engineering assessment, just to see what we need to do in order to push that phase forward. You can take questions. I know that was a little bit broad, and I don't know if feel free to make any comments to the board. I know that we spoke about this a month or so ago. Were there any other questions or comments from the board? I know that there's a memo in the packet and some background information as well on the project.
So Mike, I think this had something to do with the sediment drain and the analysis that has to be done before anything can be designed to do that. This is to protect the little winter pond. And like you said, there wasn't enough funding in the mitigation payments from the 115 line. And this is what, would be a step forward to take care of the things to take care of this sediment drain to protect the little winter pond that we couldn't do at that meeting.
Yeah, we have to really evaluate what needs to be done there. A lot of what happens is sand and debris from the road goes through the along with the water, the drains, and it fills up actually, where we have to essentially kind of clean out the ponds of all the silt and sand. This would kind of catch that and prevent it from happening. That's my understanding anyways. I know I'm probably butchering it to a certain degree. Typically what we do at this stage of a project is we have some analysis done, and we review prior studies that we've done, but also kind of have a plan to move forward. And
yeah, Anne is asking if her mic is working, and it's not. Yeah, we can't hear you, Anne.
Yeah, so I think that what Anne is saying, or as Susan was indicating, her mic isn't working, but that that we need a study to evaluate what the right approach is moving forward. So we're at a point where all our departments have been kind of overextended as far as their professional services budget. We've been pretty active in moving a lot of projects forward. So we would think this would be a good way for a kind of a select board priority as well to move forward this this analysis. So questions or comments? And this would be for VHB, and we've already kind of had some limited discussions with them in order to kind of identify the scope of work at this stage. But
so would you be ready for a motion at this point?
Sure. Yeah, take a motion.
So I'll move that we approve the letter to Representative Michael Day to seek state funding of approximately $6,000 for environmental consulting services initial review for Little Winter Pond.
Second.
Let me just make a friendly amendment there. So we've already Mike and his team, they work pretty fast, and we had to get under their, we had like a 20-hour period where we had to get a request in to get into the supplemental budget. So that's kind of gone out anyway. But the request is for us to transfer $6,000 from our hospital gift account to the line item for VHB to perform their initial analysis. So maybe there'll be a few more questions if that's the case, and I'll certainly take questions from the board on that. Sorry, Susan, I know I had confused you probably earlier tonight talking about it, but Any questions in regards to that or concerns at all?
No, I think the Friends of Winter Pond have done such a remarkable job and have really identified this as a really high need. So I'm in support.
Okay, great. So I guess the amendment to that motion would be for Patty's benefit here, for the select board to approve $6,000 for VHB for the VHB scope of services contract related to Winter Pond out of the hospital gift account.
Second?
All in favor, we'll take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And yes, for me, the motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, Ann, and thank you to Friends of Winter Pond and certainly Representative Day. We're going to kind of keep that request there. This kind of just will identify what the priorities are, and hopefully we can get some state funding down the road. But it's a tough budgetary season to ask for earmarks, even though it's always tough to try to get those. But so we appreciate it. Lisa, is there anything else that we need to kind of jump to that people are waiting on, or?
No, I think we can.
Okay,
run down the list.
We'll jump back up to the top, I guess, for town manager's report, and we've got some appointments that have to be made too.
Yep. So in accordance with the Code of Bylaws, Chapter 5, Section 10, I've made the following reappointments for constables to, I'm going to butcher this name, but it's Jack Sula, 3 Walcott Road, Stephen DeRosa, 6 Pepper Hill Drive, and Jeffrey Wolf, 1 Lakeview Road. All terms expire November 30th, 2021. Moving down, in accordance with Section 4-2B of the Town Charter, I've made the following full-time promotional appointment in the DPW Water and Sewer Department to Michael Balba to working foreman, respectfully requesting the board to waive the usual 15-day appointment period.
So I move that we waive the usual 15-day effective waiting period for the promotional appointment of Michael Balba to working foreman in the Department of Public Works.
Second?
All in favor, Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And yes, for me, the motion carries unanimously 5-0.
Okay, I've made the following promotional full-time appointment in the DPW Building Department, Anthony Dolan to a multi-craft specialist, also requesting to waive the 15-day appointment period.
I move that we waive the usual 15-day effective waiting period for the promotional appointment of Anthony Dolan to multi-craft specialist in the Department of Public Works.
Second?
All in favor, Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And yes, for me, motion carries unanimously 5-0.
I'm making the following conditional appointment in the engineering department of Brian Mantor to assistant town engineer in the engineering department. Because the engineering department has been without an assistant town engineer, I respectfully request that the board waive the customary 15-day waiting period to allow him to start as soon as possible.
So I move we waive the usual 15-day effective waiting period for the conditional appointment of Brian Mantor as assistant town engineer in the engineering department to allow Mr. Mantor to begin employment as soon as possible.
Second?
All in favor, Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And yes, for me, motion carries unanimously 5-0.
Great. And Brian is replacing Brian. So
It's good to keep it simple.
I know. Okay, so I did include some written updates in the board packet, so that is public. I don't necessarily need to go through all of this. I think Jen Murphy probably went over the COVID testing. The liquor licenses, I just want to let you know that all the establishments that had it existing did reapply. So I'm hoping that's a good signal. We did waive the fees for that. So they're really wasn't a heavy lifting for that, but we're certainly hoping that businesses continue to do what they can to stay afloat through the pandemic. And we're still trying to figure out how to get more relief for them. The recent state grant was actually oversubscribed by a 10-to-1 ratio. So over $500 million in a request for $50 million available. Of course, we're hoping to get more, but certainly anything we can think of doing for businesses, I will let you know. There was kind of a survey that was done of towns and whether they had waived fees, and many had not. Some did, but many had not. So I think we're doing the right thing to help our businesses here. We're also reviewing how outdoor dining went, and we'll propose how we think the next permit season should go in the next few months. We've got a couple of grants that we'll talk about next. I know that I don't know if you acknowledged that the Winchester Master Plan had been selected for a APA award, but that's, I think, great news for us and for Jan Goldson, who did a great job for our town. We have a couple of projects in the works. So the Waterfield lot, we did extend the MOU to December 18th. There was a couple of issues that we're trying to work out right now that I think we'll talk more about next week, but they're there are things that we want to get right so that we have sort of a pre-established understanding of things like the base rent, the annual rent, and some of the conditions that we would move forward with for the land disposition agreement and the ground lease, which we'll work on next. Winning Farm, so we're sort of advertising the lottery for 2 units, and all the information about for first-time home buyers is on the town website. I think there's a Zoom information session coming up this week that folks can sign on to. Last week I stopped by 10 Chester Street, so they've done a really, really good job. I don't know if any of you have. I'm trying to see if the Housing Authority can send me before pictures, but the way that Jack described that property to me before, they've done a significant amount of work, and as you know, that's using the Select Board's housing fund to do that project. They went out to bid earlier this year. The bids came in way over budget, so they went out again. They received 2 bids that were within budget. And the contractor they selected did a really good job and ended up building it for about $129,000. The state had their regional meeting that covered Winchester last week. A few of us spoke at that meeting. The control board met this morning to discuss potential cuts of services. Secretary Pollock was on this morning saying that they're probably going to delay some, if not most, of the votes till February. My understanding is that they're getting a lot of pushback, but also there's some thought about perhaps getting some federal relief, which could help offset some of the cuts that they're proposing. But they did their new financials, and they had come up with sort of a low scenario, a moderate scenario, and a high scenario. The high scenario being kind of like the worst case scenario, and they actually reported that they're doing a little bit worse than their worst case scenario. So they're kind of at the drawing board now. I did get a call from the MBTA today asking for some clarifying questions on the comment letter that was sent on behalf of the board in the town, most notably about sort of the how the Waterfield lot development that Civico would be undertaking would impact the easement area. So we did provide them with some more information. I'm hoping that's a good sign that they're at least considering some of the arguments that we've put forward, and I will certainly keep you updated if there's any more progress on that. And I think the only other item that I had wanted to include here was the police reform bill, but I think we're all still waiting to see if the governor will sign that. So maybe I'll have more information about that next week. Any questions on the updates?
Great, thanks, Lisa. So we'll move down to our next agenda item in order, which is the comptroller's report. I don't know if anybody had any questions or comments on that. Stacy's not here, and it's a little bit above my pay grade, but we can certainly identify any questions and get them to her and get a response if there's anything that jumped out at anyone. Okay, I don't see anything. So we'll jump down. I do see a couple folks that are here potentially from design review. So we'll jump down to the business item 6 that I'd added on, and I'll explain a little bit. It's one of the design review committee, and many of our committees are looking for some support for kind of paid recording secretaries. And so we, in past years when we had joint meetings with the planning board, we had discussed a couple shared priorities. One of them was maybe increasing the building permit fees to offset the cost of maybe a part-time zoning enforcement officer, but also finding some funds for recording secretaries for some of the committees that we find are necessary to really have those votes recorded and have minutes done properly. It's difficult especially on some of the smaller committees when people are kind of rotating out in and out between meetings to have that information be recorded properly and have minutes be moving around if it's just volunteers. So a lot of those votes and the specifics of the votes are connected to other future public hearings. For example, when we are looking at any sort of development in the town center, the planning board is the special permit granting authority based on our rezoning in the center business district. So that relies on votes from historical and from the design review and added analysis. And so making sure that our notes are clear, the votes are clear, are really important for those applicants. And so I don't know, Lisa, I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but not necessarily right this second. But if there's a way that we can kind of look towards some of our building permit fees, if it's the board's pleasure, certainly to kind of come up with some additional funds. And for these, I mean, it's not a lot of money to compensate recording secretaries, and we do have them on some of our committees, but I think we just have to figure out an ongoing revenue source from them. It seems to me that some of our building department fees might be a good place to draw on that. I don't know. Certainly open to any suggestions or comments.
Yeah, I will say that I think the way our budget process will work, they're not necessarily linked. So funding the recording secretary would not necessarily link to whether or not we get building permit fees, just because of the way they come into the budget. Fees would have come into a separate line item, but I would say if there's certainly an added value for us to support a committee like this, and we've sort of seen a continued strength in that particular line item. So it's certainly very, very possible that I could work to include this in the budget that I present to FinCom. I don't know if there's a sense of whether they're looking to get something funded sooner. If so, then I could certainly look to see if there's a budget that we could allocate it towards right now. But it wouldn't be.
I think it's both, really. They probably need a little bit of support, and when we see some of the projects that are coming down the line too, that they're going to be busy, and maybe it's appropriate that they have some we identify a recording secretary for them if we can.
Yeah. So it would come out of somebody's budget. And if there wasn't that excess amount, then we would probably have to, probably get a reserve fund transfer for that small amount.
Do we have any idea what it might cost for, something like that? I know that we, some of the committees that we do pay recording secretaries for, they may meet for longer and more regularly. So, but I'm not really sure because I haven't really, it's something we've been doing more in recent years.
So certainly somebody from the design review committee can correct me if I'm wrong, but I recently got an email requesting $2,000 for the next budget cycle. I think it was for the next budget cycle. I don't think that was the amount for the remainder of the year. So if that's the amount, then we would just, add that to, to somebody's budget.
Okay. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Seem like something that we want to do?
Well, I would say that it seems like in the past, I don't know, 5, maybe shorter, 3 years, the design review committee's workload has actually gone up, that more permits, more projects are going through the design review committee first. And so they have to, like you said, be sure that their minutes are accurate and can sort of inform the planning board or inform the next stage of approvals. And, I've been on a committee where you have this sort of, you take turns taking notes and doing minutes, and it's, you do kind of capture the gist of the discussion, but to actually generate something a little more technical, a little more accurate that sort of refers to the zoning bylaws and refers to the project plans, I can really understand why they need somebody who's just focusing on taking the minutes and not also trying to participate in the meeting. So I can see the need for this.
I would also say that it may, certainly help with the comprehensiveness of the votes, that by having some assistance with the recording, and also, as Ms. Verdicchio is pointing out, the timing of having the recording of the vote transmitted to other committees is important to keep a project advancing, and so that there's no kind of hiccup or delay, based on a volunteer schedule or that sort of thing, with kind of finalizing minutes that might reflect the vote as well. So, and this is something that I'm assuming design review has reached out for and they're interested in. So I fully support this as well. Thank you.
So the potential easiest way to fund this is I'm going to the Climate Action Advisory Committee meeting this Thursday. I was originally going there to discuss people who applied for a recording secretary position for them, that we had identified about I think it was either $1,200 or $1,500 within my budget to fund. Since then, we've now received a grant for the sustainability director who could potentially play that role. So if the Climate Action Group is okay with not getting a recording secretary, then I can reallocate those funds towards design review.
Thanks, Lisa. It's still, relatively short money. I know that we're kind of have a tough time in the department-wise because we've been moving a lot of projects forward. But yeah, I think for them at this point of the year, when they're facing a lot of projects, and we still have an appointment that we need to make there as well. If we can support them in the short term and put something in place long term, that would be great. And it'd be great if we could, kind of provide employment to someone that's doing this over multiple committees as well. I don't know if that's, I've seen that happen in a couple instances in town, but it's helpful because there's a certain way that we do things that is needs to be uniform, and I think would be helpful. So thank you. Okay, we'll keep moving. So back to the top of our business agenda, the climate resiliency grant.
It is a good segue. So we applied for $55,000 from MAPC. They were, I think, supposed to notify people in late October. So frankly, we thought we didn't get it, but we were just notified pretty recently that they're awarding us $52,250, so just under what we requested. I'm still going over the contract documents with them now. The way they kind of wrote the contract documents, it's like for a project. So because we're hiring a person, it doesn't quite jive with like a definitive project versus hiring a person. So I'm kind of going through the document right now and seeing where I could make changes that make sense. But this is funding that would go through November 30th of next year. We do have a job description. We did go and add this job description to the schedule at Springtown meeting. So it's there. I think the range is like in the mid 60s, low 60s to low 90s. So there's a wide range. But we're thinking that we might be hiring in the $70,000 to $80,000 annual salary, not including benefits. We applied for 2 MVP grants this year and were unable to get either one of them. So, this is a position we're hoping can help us get those kinds of grants and can kind of help, pay for themselves through the savings, the benefits, and the grants they're able to get. So you've got the job description, you've got the award letter in your packet. Let me know if you have any questions.
I think what we're seeing too is that the kind of funding for a lot of these positions is pretty competitive because there's a lot of return on your investment. So I think it's not so much a trend as it's really a necessary function of local government, and people are really looking to kind of leverage opportunities out there. So I think it's great that we're able to get a grant to move the position forward and hopefully get someone in there. Are there any questions or comments?
I think because this involves making a commitment of hire a person, and this will go beyond the grant that we receive. It's not as simple as just me signing the contract documents. It's needing to see if there's a commitment on the board. I know that you supported this position in the past. Of course, this is pre-pandemic, but whether you would still like to support this grant and us hiring somebody so that we would then be obligated to fund the remainder of that position in the fiscal year 22 budget.
Yeah, so I support funding this position from this grant and then putting it in the operating budget request for future fiscal years. I supported it in the spring, and I know we had to remove it due to uncertainty around the pandemic. But I think while we are in the middle of the pandemic, and we can't forget that climate is still a crisis that needs to be addressed, and that in less than a year, hopefully we will all be vaccinated for COVID, but the climate crisis will continue and will be worse than it was a year ago. And not only that, but also I came from finance committee where I was for many years. This position is a no-brainer because obviously nothing can be guaranteed. But the reality is that we've seen in other communities that have a person in this position that the amount in grants that they're able to receive because they have the time to apply for them, because they're aware of shovel-ready projects and other things, is more than the cost of the position. So I am 100% in favor of moving forward with this.
Yeah, I am too. I just wanted to mention that, the Climate Action Committee and the Climate Action Plan that they developed is really robust, and clearly Winchester is in a really great position to be a leader in the state or in the Commonwealth for climate action. And so I think that this position will be a really great first step. Well, not first step because they've done so much work, but a great first step in really putting all of their plans into action. So I'm in support of it too.
Just wanted to say it's also will be helpful to have kind of a consistency in the approach that will probably overall make it more effective and productive. Thank you.
Lisa, has the Finance Committee given any indication kind of on the longer term ad on the operating side? Because, it was kind of cut out right away from the budget process last time. And, I'm just concerned that the statewide grants may be reduced, over a period of, over the next couple of years as well. So even though we've seen a lot of growth, are they willing to support this moving forward? I mean, it's when we initially spoke, I think when you and Mariano spoke with them, that they seemed very excited about the position. So I was surprised that it got cut. So I'm not sure what's going on.
So I actually was the one that recommended the cuts.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So even though I had submitted the budget, I was still working very proactively with FinCom because I was the one that was giving them updates as to what was happening on the state level and giving them an indication of how much I think we needed to cut. And then I made the recommended cuts. And, I think they were just, it wasn't like an official policy, but I think there was an indication that, if we're making significant cuts, then it was sort of like a no new position rule. And, as it turned out, we happened to be significantly more conservative than we needed to be. And I don't, think we should not be conservative. I think we should continue to be conservative as we're going into next year's budget cycle. But I think a position like this has just a lot of merit, a lot of potential. And the fact that we're going to be able to get, almost, 9 or 10 months of funding, that gives this position a lot of the head start so that they can, hopefully we'll have an actual person on board so that they can actually be questioned by FinCom and have a lot more information for them about, their knowledge, their approach to getting more funding and helping the town.
Great. Thank you.
So I guess I could go ahead and move that we accept the Accelerating Climate Resiliency Grant from MAPC in the amount of $52,500 to fund a sustainability director position through November 30th, 2021, and to support the additional funding for this position in the fiscal year 2022 budget, which is estimated to be in the range of $40,000 to $50,000 plus benefits.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And yes, for me, the motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next item up is the Community Compact IT grant.
If I could just thank Ruth Tremarkey, Kim Rowland, Ken Pruitt, and Brian Zakelli for their help with the Climate Resiliency Grant. It was a lot of work in a very short amount of time. We could not have done it without them. So similar speaking, the Community Compact Cabinet IT grant, there was a lot of help from our IT department. So Matt and then Al, our building commissioner, also was very helpful. So a lot of team effort goes into these things. We weren't as lucky. We asked for $43,100 and they awarded us $17,500 that's basically the setup for the program, which was about a 6 to 9 month project. So they did not, they basically took out our request to fund the 5 annual fees, and I've listed those in the memo, but they amount to about $25,600 per year. So my request for this board is similar to the last one, which is, we could certainly accept the grant and set it up, but it doesn't do anything unless we pay for the various fees. So that does require some commitment for fiscal year 22.
So Lisa, can I just ask, the fees are this is for software, and then you have to pay an annual license fee? Is that what this
Yeah,
is?
so these are the annual fees.
Would there be any cost savings from operating cost savings from digitizing the permits?
Not initially. I mean, we actually did increase the staffing at the building department because, the work from the ZBA is increased dramatically, and they're also trying to catch up in terms of taking paper documents and scanning those. So
Yeah, but as far as other costs like printing costs, mailing costs, storage, I know that the building department is taking a significant portion of the basement of Parkhurst to store paper. So would it free up space that we could use? I mean, there's other value that it might provide.
So there would definitely be value. We would not free up any storage space, unfortunately, because we still need to keep a paper copy, but it would cut down on the amount of transactions that the clerical staff would have to do. So it would actually free them up to do more of the scanning and more of the ZBA work. So there is a benefit in that. There's still not enough time in the day to kind of do their current work. So this would be very helpful from that end.
So it might prevent having to add additional positions in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we added 10 hours of clerical work, but with the ZBA work, doubling and adding on the scanning project, which we had never done before, that was not enough. So I would say that this would certainly be helpful.
Well, I think this is something we've talked about, or I've heard people talking about and asking about for many years. Can we have an online permitting system? Can we increase our online capacity? So this seems to be very sensible to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We should set it up and then, come up with a plan for the operating costs.
So I would need a similar motion to the last grant to accept this grant and to see if you would support the funding of the fees for next budget cycle.
So I move to accept the Community Compact Cabinet IT grant from the state in the amount of $17,500 to fund an online e-permitting system and to support funding the licenses required for this system in the fiscal year 2022 budget, estimated to be in the range of $25,000 to $26,000.
Second.
Lisa, just a question about the memo here. So you're saying we may only need 18,000. I think that's 18,400. But then it'll be, kind of up to 25. Is that just want to clarify.
Yeah, so the 18 so the first one, the OpenGov PLC, is sort of the primary one for e-permitting. Mm-hmm. The other ones, my understanding is that this e-permitting system has the ability to link to a whole bunch of other software programs and other departments. So okay. The added value of sort of these additional 2 through 5, what we can kind of discuss during the budget process.
But it makes that, I mean, essentially makes that other 18,000 investment a lot more worth it, a lot more valuable.
Yeah.
For kind of a lot less money. Sorry to confuse that. I know there's a seconded motion there. I'll just move it forward, but I just wanted to be clear. I'll take a roll call vote. All in favor, Jackie,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next agenda item 5, business curbside pickup.
So La Patisserie and D'Agostino's is looking for dedicated space for curbside pickup at the Waterfield lot. So it's directly behind their back door. And it's for the Christmas season.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't see like an end date. So I mean, I'm fine with actually recommending this until further notice, and I can keep track of it just like we do the other curbside pickup and let you know.
So how many
That sounds
spaces are we talking about? And is it for both La Patisserie and D'Agostino's? It's both of them, right?
Yeah.
Are they going to provide the signage so that people know where to go?
So the DPW has been providing the signage. I'll have to kind of work with Jay on exactly how we want to do it, because usually it's like an A-frame or a sign, so that the black and orange signs. But if they're in that lot, I'll just tell Jay to kind of take a look, and we'll make a recommendation on how to sign it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Any other questions or comments?
Do we need to
I think we need to
say a
vote on
certain
this.
number of spaces? 3? It's 6?
Well, if you want to give me wide latitude, you can
Yeah.
up to 6, and then we can
Okay.
make that determination.
Yeah.
So I move that we approve the use of up to 6 parking spaces in the Waterfield parking lot for curbside pickup for D'Agostino's and La Patisserie starting as soon as possible and lasting until further notice, and authorize the town manager to complete the arrangements.
Can I comment on that?
Yep, please.
So I wouldn't designate, even though it's coming from them, I wouldn't designate the 2 of them. So for example, Camellas has one in front of them, but it doesn't mean that, people who want to go in for an ice cream or, getting a coffee can't use it as well. So we don't want to designate
General
it.
curbside.
Yeah, general curbside is good.
Okay.
All right, so the motion would be amended instead of saying for pickup for the 2 places, but it would be for general curbside pickup.
Okay.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next up, the last item for kind of a brief discussion is the budget outlook. I think we're just kind of starting our budget discussions or heading into them with the finance committee and the schools. I don't know, Lisa, did you have anything in particular?
Yeah, so I was hoping to have more details for you today, but I did give several departments another week to submit their budgets to me. So they're due December 10th. I'll be working on them over the weekend, and then we're having our first budget summit per select board policy the following week. So it'll be, select board members, school committee, FinCom. I did have a conversation with Senator Lewis today. We're just trying to wrap our heads around the next budget cycle. I think they're kind of starting some of their discussions next week. He's not sure that they're going to have the typical revenue consensus by the end of December like they usually do. But you know, at least before I submit the budget on February 15th, there's probably going to be some direction. So not very informative on my part. So I think we're just going to have to prepare a couple different scenarios and some of the municipal meetings I've been talking with other folks as well and what they're doing. Some are anticipating level funds, some are anticipating cuts. So we'll kind of have to do our guess again. So if we level fund based on fiscal year 21, that's a cut from most people who have level funded, who will level fund from what the governor put forward. So it's about $1 million delta. So we're kind of trying to figure that out. I think I don't have the exact number, but I know we have over $1 million left in the override as well. So we'll have to make decisions around what, if any, portion of that we'd want to spend as well. And then lastly, one of the major considerations is starting July 1st, what kinds of COVID vaccination, other related expenses do we anticipate? Will there be any funding sources for those? So those are kind of the in addition to just the normal budget things that we think about every year. But I have yet to have a normal budget year with all of you. So this is nothing unusual.
Yes, why only have one budget scenario? It would be so dull.
Right. Any questions or anything on the budget process from? I mean, we really won't know anything until next week, right? I mean, so not too much we can do. Okay. Thanks, Lisa. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any changes to any of the minutes?
I sent in a few, it's like, missing words, typos, clarifications to Patty.
Okay. If there are any others, then we can take a motion to approve the consent agenda subject to previously submitted edits.
So I move that we approve the consent agenda for all the minutes listed there, and that would be subject to any changes that have been submitted.
Second.
All in favor? I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And yes, for me, the motion carries unanimously 5-0. Quick question, Susan. I didn't schedule an executive session tonight, but I knew that something happened on the Vail side. Did we want to move quickly into executive session to kind of just give an update? Or do you want to,
I think that would make sense.
Okay.
It's kind of an ever quickly evolving situation, so I think that would be helpful for me. So I move that we move into executive session for the purpose of discussing litigation or real estate,
Property.
or litigation with respect to the Vail project in Woburn.
Second.
And we will not not return to our regular session as well. So we'll kind of kick everybody out of here and then continue in this Zoom. If that is okay with everyone. I think it's been seconded. So all in favor, roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, WinCam. And I think we'll start executive session whenever recording is off, and any attendees are no longer here and have signed out.
Yes, and thanking all those people who attended.
Right.
I'm just going to delete them.
Yeah, thanks.